Greetings, brave adventurers. Welcome back. It is I, Eric UK, with a continuation video of my current campaign. Something I didn't include at the end of the last video was when we concluded that session, one of my players, the player of the sorcerer Rex, sort of quietly whispered in the old shell that he'd give me a break the next week and he'd run a side adventure for everybody, which was really cool actually. It sort of gave me a month off to sort of revitalise the old grey matter a little. And I won't cover it so much because it was just a side thing. He sort of dropped hints and things I could then use later on in the campaign. But basically, he took the characters to Sigil for the city at the centre of the multiverse from the Planescape campaign setting, and from there to the world of Athas, the Dark Sun campaign setting, on the hunt for this sort of crystal thing, at the behest of some lawful organisation. And I got to play Rex for the session. That was quite cool. I think it's been a little while since that player in question, Jay, had run anything, and he did find it a little bit difficult to challenge everybody in the party, but it was a good session anyway. So we come back last night with my continuation. So they've been given a hefty reward. As I've mentioned in previous videos, I was a little bit behind on the treasure quota. So I thought, we'll give them something. We'll give them something big. So when it was like, what was the reward you want for having travelled all the way to Athas and get this particular thing for this organisation? One of the players was just like, I want a load of gems. He wants to use it in order to use resurrection on his family who were slain. He did give me some brief sort of background on it a long time ago, and nothing's ever sort of come of it. So this is like, cool, now I can do something for that. So yay. He's got the gems he needs for that. And one of the other players said, well, his character Harrock, who is a blood rager, who hates evil wizards, doesn't like, obviously, wizards, spellcasters. So he wanted a ring of spell turning, but was a little bit concerned due to the GP cost of it. And I thought, well, hang on, that's actually quite fair. I don't think it's a bad idea to allow him to have that. And I thought, and considering how behind everyone is on the treasure rating anyway and wealth per levels, I thought, let's give them a little bit of a bump. So they all got something cool. With two of them, they got multiple smaller items, which I was even happier with, because that's manageable. But cut back to the story. So, in attempting to teleport or plane shift, I forget which, back to the city of Manzikar, they end up appearing on like this boggy ground in front of this fog-shrouded, misty lake or coastline, and they've got no idea what they are. They don't recognise it, and they find off in the distance this fisherman, basically. Well, they assume he's a fisherman. He's dressed that way, sat on the shoreline, just staring out into the fog. And I had ideas for this particular scenario, and as it went along, those ideas sort of changed. Something else popped in my head, and I thought, oh, that's a lot better. So they speak to this guy, and he says his name is Herken, and he used to live in the city of Chelsea, which is where they are, which unfortunately none of them knew. None of them passed geography or history checks, and none of them, I don't think they even had those skills. Knowledges are not something my players generally take, strangely. They had no idea what this was, and he basically explains that 25 years ago, the gods, or a god, basically dropped an ocean on the city, and it's a big sunken thing, and he's learned that every 25 years the waters will recede for 24 hours and the city is uncovered. And he says that his mother had this amulet, and basically he's waiting because he wants this amulet. It's not magical, it's just an heirloom, but it would be something to remember her by as she died in the flooding. The party are like, oh, well, we can get you that. And then they start thinking, well, hang on, although it's been underwater, you know what it looks like. So they convince him to go with them. Figgy, the swashbuckler, tries to give him a cloak of resistance, to give him a hand if they run into anything. And he seems a bit just not sure. And then eventually he very reluctantly takes the cloak and and puts it on. The waters begin to recede at an unnatural rate. The druid goes, this is a bit strange. And they start walking out, and there's like fish flopping around and all this sort of thing. And two things happen at this point. One, they notice that Hyrcan isn't leaving any footprints in the sand and the silt. And the other is they are not surprised as this ginormous shipwrecker crab rises up out of the mud. So basically, think giant crab from Mysterious Island or something like that, but a bit bigger. And then we have this nice little fight to get everyone back in together again. The paladin almost gets carried off by the crab before they're able to put it down. And they salvage some of the meat for it because they think, oh, this is be quite good. And then they turn around and say to Hyrcan, why don't you leave tracks in the sand? And Hyrcan tries to give them this story about how he's a fisherman, and fishermen are naturally nimble and dexterous, as they have to be on fishing boats. They can't get much more out of him than that, but detect evil and detect magic doesn't reveal anything unnatural or unusual. So they kind of accept it. But they're coming to think that maybe he's a ghost or something like that. But they don't push it. He's there with them and he's not doing any harmful. And soon they reach the outer limits of the city as was. It appears out of the fog, and it's this ruined city draped in seaweed and barnacles and, again, flopping dead fish and sea life and what have you. And it's immediately obvious to anyone that this city's been down here more than 25 years. The condition of it is, So once again, they're going, this guy's a ghost, and he's remembering it as he remembers it. They even find like a bakery shop that he remembers. It sort of floods into his mind, and he climbs in through the window. And when they shine their light in for him to see, the magical light basically reveals that he is translucent, he is ethereal. And he's actually wading through sort of like waist-height silt and mud without disturbing it. Only the cloak that Figgy gives him is dragging across the surface of this crap. And straight away they go, yeah, we were right, he's a ghost. And they've noticed some tracks as they're going around. There's some webbed feet tracks. They're going, fishmen. And they're not wrong. While they're trying to get Hyrcan to come out of this bakery, as was, this brewing building, they hear croaky, fish-like voices. Peering down the street, there's a group of like 14, 15 fishmen with tridents. Harrock, the Blood Ranger, steps out and sort of like, hi, at which point these things start croaking and basically charge. And they have a fight, and it's a really easy fight because these fishmen are, well, as we'll come to learn, they are deep ones. And they're only CR1, they're fairly pants, and they basically slaughter the way through these. One of them runs away, and they basically chase after him. Harrock catches him, and as he does so, he comes within sight in the distance through the fog of this giant cyclopean tower covered in barnacles and images of octopoid things attacking people and unnatural things. And he hears this chanting and worship of Dagon, and trying to get this deep one to basically lead him towards it, he falls afoul of this fearful presence and starts running away in terror. but not before the rest of the party catch this deep one he'd got and bundle it up and try and communicate with it. And it's not having any of it. Once Arik recovers, they decide that they're going to head back in. They've worked out that this is probably where they've got to go. And when they talk to Hyrcan, he basically admits that because they're fisher folk, they would offer worship up to any being of the sea, including Dagon, in order for a good catch. And they would offer sacrifices, not people. They weren't evil cultists, but they would offer up gold and jewels and other such things. And when one of them mentions sort of like the crystal that they're looking for, one of these crystals, he goes, well, there was a dodgy wizard some time back who did give them this like crystalline egg with like crystal tentacles at the bottom of it, which very much sort of like the idea of what they're looking for. They go, oh great, we've got to go into the Temple of Dagon. And so they go for it. This time, the only person that fails their save against the fear check is the orc warrior Clash, who runs away. And I thought, I'm not going to... it's thematic, but I don't want you missing out on the big fight. So I basically gave it a d6 roll, so you'll be back in this many rounds. So the party burst in there, and there are another mass load of deep ones bowing in supplication before this giant anthropomorphic blobby humanoid figure with tentacled faces and vestigial wings that sat on this giant pedestal with this crystal and egg thing. They have a surprise round because the creature is asleep essentially, and the deep ones are far too busy praying. So they drop a flame strike on a group of them, they slaughter their way through a handful, and then we go in. At this point, the deep ones react. The star spawn of Cthulhu, as it is revealed to be, arises and awakes, and we have this massive fight. 2 rounds in, Clash can come back. So what I did with this is the deep ones haven't been changed. They're still level. They're a CR1, and the party at this point is level 10. It's like, I want this to be an interesting fight, but I want it not necessarily to be a massive challenge, but I want it to be slightly annoying. So I'm not boosting the deep ones. All that will happen is I've got 14 little pieces that I can put on the map trap with the deep ones. If they kill any, then there is basically an unlimited sustained wave of them that will come back. Kill any of them, and they come back in from these doors on the side. So every time they're killing them, more come back. And the idea is just to bog the party down so they have to really struggle to get this crystal and what have you. So, what do? Figgy decides, even though he's a short little halfling, he's going to do... There's a route. He can run, he can try and do a running jump and leap up and grab this crystal. He doesn't quite make it, but he's only short by a little bit. So I allow him to grab hold of the edge, and he can pull himself up next time. He grabs the crystal when he does so, and he goes. The big gribbly thing basically looks at him, casts an insanity spell, which basically he fails the will save. He's now permanently confused. Ha ha ha. So it flies after him, it grabs him up because he's holding the crystal. The crystal's also beginning to drain his will at this point, and it starts to go back to the pedestal. Harak, who at this point has, I think it's airwalk, might be fly actually saying, but basically goes up, grabs Figgy from the claws of this beast, tries to fly off. He's managed to hit it a couple of times as well during this point, but he also gets hit by the insanity spell. He is now permanently confused. The paladin smites evil, but then gets himself bogged down with these deep ones. He does get to a point though where he's splattered enough of them that he's able to go after the star spawn with the crystal. And we have this really cool fight. I'm not going to go into all the details. We have this really cool fight where they are basically trying to deal with their two confused friends, fend off an unlimited wave of deep ones, and try and get this crystal off of the star spawn and kill it. Now, eventually, they've managed to whittle down enough of the deep ones in the immediate area as they're now flying, airwalking, and they can keep out the way of them. And they can start to pummel away on this creature. And they do eventually do it. And with the death of the star spawn, the deep ones basically and run off. So at this point, this is where we sort of ended the session, because that fight took probably a good hour and a half. Normally I find with these sort of fights, you either have to make them so silly because you've got characters that are really powerful. Otherwise you make them too easy. And I was actually really pleased that this encounter worked out the way I wanted it to. I wanted them to spud it. I don't want them to not get away with it. And it was just the right level of, I think, I won't say, I'll say challenge. And it worked. I was really pleased. The other thing was, originally the idea was going to be that, yes, Hyrkin was a ghost. But I was just going to have kind of like sea creatures in the ruined city. I wasn't going to have, it wasn't going to be a Lovecraftian Shadows of Rinsmouth / Dagon type thing. But for some reason, something popped into my head and it just worked. And I ran with it. And I think that was actually a lot better than what I had originally sort of planned. It just means I had to wing a few things and make up a few bits on the fly. I could have probably done a few more encounters or work out a few more maps. But I'm pleased with the way the session turned out. They've now leveled to 11th. So I'm guessing we've probably got about another 3 months worth of game before this particular campaign will wrap up. I think I'm going to wrap it up about 16th, as I believe I've mentioned before. The guys had a really good time. I actually got a few things off them on Messenger at the end of it, which is good. So I've just got to roll some treasure up for what was in the Starspawn Temple, and then depending whether they're going to help Hyrkin find this amulet of his mother's, we'll see what happens. Anyway, that's that particular session. I hope you enjoyed it. And any comments, drop them down below. Give me a like. Hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video. Until next time, take care, guys, and good gaming.